Welcome to Hotelier's Voice. No, stop. Wait a minute. This is going to be slightly different, I'm afraid, to my usual episodes. I've decided it's time for us just to have a think about ourselves and decide how we're going to move forward. In this crazy, chaotic world, when do you get a moment to really look at yourself and know your place? Are you doing what's right for you? Are you having the right balance, your care between your professional and your personal life? Well, I'm very fortunate today that I'm going to be joined by Mike Mesoroff, a 30-year hospitality veteran, world-traveling bartender, but now a personal freedom coach, helping industry leaders to stop that grinding and start living. He's a founder of Self Hospitality Collective. We'll learn more about that, but he's not alone. No, I decided that I also wanted to bring someone else on. It's one of his clients, in fact. Otto Abad, the owner and president of Associated Food and Equipment and Supplies. As we look at some of the challenges that he experienced in his own life, as he worked his way up from waiter to restaurant manager, eventually to owning this business. Did it deliver what he expected? And how did he manage and move his life forward? Together, us three are going to look at the challenges that we experience in our professional lives, because sometimes we move too fast and don't take a moment to breathe.
Hotelier's Voice from Travel Market Life, exploring opportunity in hospitality with Ryan Haynes. Hear from the people making a difference, from revenue to operations, marketing to digitalization. Learn the thinking behind their decisions.
Mike, thank you for joining me and reminding me that I'm human again. Now, tell us just quickly, where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, Ryan, it's a pleasure. I am in Costa Rica, which is where I live.
Oh, lovely. Isn't it nice, to be in Costa Rica? So, I mean, you came to me, with really quite an interesting pitch for this podcast. And I've spoken to the guys here in the UK at Hospitality Action, really about the work that they do with people who work in the hospitality industry. And it's really quite a challenging, difficult industry to work in. I mean, I was only a teenager when for 4 years I worked in the industry before I then moved into the services side. So, I never had the experience of that sort of leadership and managerial positions and the pressures that you have. But I mean, you've gone through a lot of those experiences and worked with people as well that have had those challenges.
In my own personal life, just kind of starting in the industry as a busboy and then starting to wait tables and then moving on to the corporate side. I worked for an airline for 10 years. I got to see it all. And now coaching top leaders in the hospitality industry, I see that no one's immune, no one's safe. And honestly, sometimes it takes getting to the top rung of the ladder to realize that actually wasn't where joy was. You have to almost sometimes get to the top to say, I don't feel any different. In fact, I feel a little bit cheated. Like, where's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? And that's why I love this idea of bringing Otto on today, because he lived that, and he's at the top, and he was at the lowest point of his life at the top of his game. And it's just going to be an interesting, fascinating story to hear. And similar to me, I wasn't necessarily at the top leadership wise. I left JetBlue as a manager of business development, started bartending and traveling the world. But when I ended up in Breckenridge, Colorado, I was at the top of the leisure game. I was having a lot of fun. I was skiing every day of the ski season. I was bartending. I worked at a great restaurant. I had my dog, my wife, all these amazing things going on in my life. And I was at the lowest, darkest depression of my entire life, even, lower than I was working corporate. And I knew that I kind of had to move on from there. It was the lowest point of my life. And I think that's the visceral wake-up call I know that Otto had. I know that I had, all my clients have, where they're starting to listen to the signs, where the nudges become shakes, and we all need to be shaken to awaken, whether that's depression, panic attacks, anxiety. You start listening and saying, okay, well, that the fun, the the pleasure, the thrill of traveling and skiing and activities and all that stuff, it's not where it's at. It's not where, sustainable joy comes from. That's where I started my inner journey. And that's now what I help leaders like Otto with, is going within and becoming the generators of joy and peace and presence, so that they can feel so much of that it overflows out into the world, to their teams, to their colleagues, to their families. That it's the inner work, it's the inner journey, and it's not hard. It's just sometimes it has to get pretty dark for us to realize that that's what's been missing from our life. You said it's so fast that we don't take a breath, and you keep doing that years and years or decades and decades after one another, without taking a stop, without breathing deeply, without, it's burnout. You do that to your car burns out, and you don't get upset with it. You take it to the shop, you give it a rest, you give it some oil, some fuel, whatever it needs. But for some reason, most of us as humans, we dig in deeper. We try to work harder, as if adding fuel to the problem is going to solve the problem. And then we kind of come to a place where it's like, okay, it's time for a new solution.
I completely get it. I've worked those 15-hour days. I've worked the 6-7 hour days a week. It's a challenge. It's hard work. You say you feel you're on that constant treadmill. It's exhausting. You get a high from the next win, but then you get a low when you get a loss, and you're trying to balance that out. Now, let's bring on Otto. Otto, thank you ever so much for joining us and being part of sharing your story today. Tell us about your career journey. In hospitality, you started as a waiter.
I started as a busboy, like Mike did, worked my way up to waiter. As a matter of fact, one of my family members had a really beautiful restaurant on a lake in central Louisiana, and I had every role that you could have inside that restaurant, up until the point where I was managing for my uncle. And he basically fired me. He told me that I needed to go finish my degree, because I was serious about wanting to pursue a career in hospitality, and he had the forethought and affection for me to make me go and get a degree, which I'm very grateful for. And so then, I focused on the restaurant operation side of the business for years, until Brandy and my wife and I were about to get married, and I got a phone call out of the blue. That's kind of a recurring trend in my life. Fate just kind of seems to hand me what I need exactly when I need it, as long as I'm present enough to accept it. But I got a phone call out of the blue from a gentleman that had installed a kitchen in one of the restaurants that I operated. Asked me if I wanted to join his team. That was my first introduction to the equipment dealership industry, if you will. And I went to work for him. Within a couple of years, I was running his business. I eventually parlayed that into going to work for another dealership not far away, and with a promise of a 5-year apprenticeship, if you will, to buy out the owners of that business, which I did in November of 2018. So it was kind of the culmination of my entire working career. I was finally working for myself. I thought I had, reached the pinnacle, and that's when my life started really falling apart. It had been falling apart for years, but I was so distracted by my obsession with my career that I couldn't see it. But then when it really took me getting to that point that I thought I wanted all my life, and realizing that nothing was changing, that all of the pain, all of the anxiety that I had felt all those years was still there. And it was almost, it was a shock to the system.
Okay. So you were experiencing this, you recognized it, but how did you recognize it? What was that moment, that mirror moment where you could actually see that? Because as you say, you've been doing it for years. Some of you, like many of us, become numb to it. We don't even realize that we're suffering from anxiety anymore. We just treat it as a character trait of ours without seeing that actually there's a root to this. this character trait that's causing that. So what was it? Is there anything in particular that helped you recognize that you were perhaps in burnout?
Looking back now after I started my journey to self-help, self-hospitality, if you will, I had lots of signs. I was telling the people closest to me in my life that I was suicidal. And I was. I had to drive across a river every day from my home to my office. And literally every day I would talk myself out of driving off the bridge because I had convinced myself that would be a way to commit suicide, but make sure that my family would get the insurance money, the life insurance money. And I was vocal about that, but that wasn't even a big enough sign for me. Again, fate intervened. I was on a trip in Costa Rica, and our driver convinced me that we should go on, have a authentic local experience. We should get on a boat with a guy known as the Monkey Man and go out into this swamp and see these monkeys. This amazing experience. And so I was there with my wife and my daughter, a couple of really close friends of ours, and a few strangers, and everybody was having the time of their life. This guy literally took us out into the middle of a coastal swamp, started hollering as loud as he could, and all these monkeys just come out of the trees and descend on the boat. We're handing them little pieces of lime, and they're cleaning themselves. There's monkeys playing in my daughter's ear. Everybody's having the time of their life, except for me. I'm on my telephone trying to get a service tech out to a restaurant to fix a fryer. I'm literally talking on the phone, trying to shoo away the monkeys. And this stranger sitting next to me looks at me and says, "I bet you can't put that thing down for the next 10 minutes. That stranger was Mike Mesoroff. And my wife, my best friend Frank, probably even my daughter expected me to try to throw him off the boat. But for some reason I didn't. I actually I took a deep breath. I put my phone down and experienced this amazing adventure. Got to really see the joy on my daughter's face. Got to see the beautiful ecosystem that we were in. I mean, it was probably only 15 or 20 minutes, but I literally turned off the ringer and I sat there and took it all in. When we got off the boat, Mike told me that he was a personal freedom coach. And a couple of weeks later, after we got home, I reached out to him and started a program with him that not only changed my life, but changed the lives of everybody that I care about.
Mike, I mean, is this quite typical of recognizing some of the signs of someone for burnout? What are some of the quite visible and recognizable signs of someone who is really struggling in the same way as Otto was?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common. Sorry, I get emotional, especially hearing him tell that story. It's just a beautiful thing, and that's fate too. I was supposed to be on the monkey boat tour the day before, and my wife got sick, and it's the universe putting us together. There's no mistakes. I think it's just not being able to turn it off and be present. I think that there's this huge misconception of what presence is. The present moment is like this tiny little hairline on a watch dial. And in fact, it's actually all there ever is. All we ever have is this continuous, eternal present moment. And you just see people who don't know how to be in it. They can't sit still. And one of my favorite quotes of all time was said in 1654, if you could imagine how much busier life is now than in 1654. Scientist, philosopher Blaise Pascal says, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. So you got to think of all the wars, all the turmoil, the genocide, the horrors, the poverty, but then the internal strife that all of us experience are because we don't know how to sit alone with ourselves. We're not comfortable doing that. We're trained our entire lives how to be distracted. So mostly what the work that I do right away with my clients is help them just a little bit practice focus instead of distraction. I mean, Otto's a walking testament. It's like within a week or two, life really starts to feel differently when you start to, it's like a richness of life that you were missing because you were doom scrolling Instagram or constantly checking emails. And you just realize like that's not life. Sometimes those are things you need to do, respond to emails. But, getting back to the question of the signs of it, it's just always being tired. It's never feeling like there's always more. Like happiness is just, if I just answer this email, I'll be happy, which turns into, if I just get through this workday, I'll be happy. If I just get through this work week, if I just get to the next vacation, you start realizing it never ends. You never get there. There is no there. So, I think anyone out there who feels like that, who feels like the to-do list is never going to end, I'm never going to take a break. Even my weekends are pretty rough because for me personally, I used to drink away my weekends and then I would dread Sunday nights because I didn't want to go to work on Monday. So I didn't even really get to enjoy the weekend. So, it's just this inability to enjoy life and not the pleasures, not the thrills, just the deep breath, the nature, birds singing, the look of your daughter's face on a monkey when a monkey's crawling on her, just the joys of life.
It is fascinating. I was actually asked on a beach just a couple of weeks ago, what is happiness? No, are you happy? And I said, well, for me, happy is about moments of joy. And moments of joy for me is seeing the sun reflect from the water at the sea at the beach. It's seeing my dog get excited over me throwing the next ball. And Otto, you having your daughter, that must be, such a daily reminder of embracing that very moment. I was a videographer, and honestly, for 5 years when I was traveling, I couldn't remember any location destination I went except through a camera lens. Not seeing it with my own eyes, not being present, not being actually there. I could remember every detail of editing those videos, but never that moment beyond that periphery. It affected clearly a lot of your relationships, Otto. How was it particularly affecting work, your team, your family, and your health at that time?
It was affecting all of those. My my son suffered from severe depression and his own struggles. The more successful I got, the more detached I got from my son, my daughter, my wife. All of those relationships were on the brink of destruction. I had probably worked my way back up to around 300 pounds when I met Mike. My sleep was terrible. I was getting no exercise. I was an ogre. People at work, people were used to having me, break down or break them down. That I ruled with an iron fist, and I had to. And it sounds so counterintuitive, but the one of the most effective messages that Mike got through to me is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. I felt like I was, giving myself to everyone else. And I was so worried about making sure that everyone was taken care of, everyone except for me, because, I was the one that was least important. I could take it, whatever it was. I could, don't worry about the mule, load the wagon. I'll take care of it. And until I committed to taking care of myself, to taking care of my mental health, of learning to separate my thoughts from myself, I couldn't really take care of anyone else. You can't pour from an empty cup. And truer words have rarely been spoken.
So Mike was there. You were lucky to stumble across him on that boat trip. But what else? What other support was out there for you? And where did you recognize to start to lean on that support? Or how did you have to have your eyes open that people were there to help you fill that glass?
It's really amazing that, once I became more vulnerable, once I realized my shortcomings, I did realize how much support was out there. The more I opened myself up to other people, I was part of a Vistage group. Not sure if you're very familiar with them, but it's a group of business owners. We meet once a month. I had been a part of that for a couple of years, and I knew those guys cared about me. But I looked at my anxiety, my depression as a weakness, and I didn't really open up to them about any of it. Once I started working with Mike, it was like I took that, it took all that shame away. And I wanted people to be able to experience. I realized I could see in other people that they were suffering from a lot of the same issues that I was suffering from. And it was like I couldn't stop myself. I wanted to give them more of what I was getting. I wanted to teach them about the benefits of meditation, of really learning to separate, like I said, yourself from your thoughts, of taking care of yourself, of pouring that affection, that love, and that caring that you're taught to give to everybody else. I was never taught to give to myself. What I wanted other people to experience the difference it could make in their lives to start taking care of themselves. And then I did realize that I had an entire network of friends and family that wanted to be there for me. And it was really an amazing experience.
You had gone from a very chaotic, fast-paced industry of hospitality to then becoming the owner and manager of your own business. How did you start to identify what the root of that problem was then, and manage that in a way to be able to move forward successfully? Could you give us an idea into actually delving into the depths of that despair?
A lot of journaling, a lot of sessions of meditation, and it started really slow, but the results were immediate and overwhelming. As soon as you start the realization of the fact that your thoughts are not you, that your mind literally runs away, and the further you get from being able to recognize that your mind is taking you places that you have no business being, the harder it is to ever take control back. But the simple acts of morning meditation that started, Mike, did it take me a week to get over a minute where I could sit quietly? I think it probably did, to start my meditation practice. And it's probably been 5 years now since I've gone a day without doing at least 20 minutes of meditation. The act of journaling daily and being vulnerable to yourself and writing down how you're feeling. It was a really intensive program that Mike put me through, but that's where I realized how much harm I was not only doing to myself, but I was doing to the people that I loved the most, that meant the most to me. It was a scary revelation, but it's one that I wouldn't trade for anything else I've ever done in my life.
I mean, Mike, one of the things that, let me just say for a moment, that I've suffered from depression. I've had to go through a lot of intense 18 months worth of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's many different practices and ways of being able to address some of these mental and emotional challenges that we go through. Some of them can be as a result of our professional experiences. Some of them can be obviously due to our own personal experiences. But tell us, Mike, a bit about your program and some of the ways that you help people like Otto really sort of come out of their shell and start to identify and deal with the challenges that they're going through.
Yeah, great question. And also, thank you for sharing that. I mean, what you just did is the first step for anyone to get help, which is vulnerability. And Otto is like just a walking example of a leader who can be vulnerable and shed some tears and say, hey, I don't know the answer to this, or hey, I'm having a really tough time with this, and realize that that's actually a strength, because it leads to whatever it is that you're missing. There's something missing. We don't even need to know what it is. I mean, to use Otto's word, it's like a shortcoming. It's something like, I just need some help. And it's not a failure. It's only a failure if you don't do anything about it. So I just appreciate you sharing that, Ryan, and also your vulnerability to just talk about it. I think that's one thing we, as industry leaders, we need to give other people permission to just say, hey, it's okay to not feel amazing. It's okay that you don't have all your shit figured out. It's okay you've never meditated. It's okay I mean, that you talk shit to yourself. Not only are we not taught to care about ourselves, and how Otto said it's kind of counterintuitive to fill your own cup first, we're usually the worst we speak worse to ourselves than our worst enemies. We treat ourselves horribly. And of course, that comes from a lot of childhood programming and then adolescence and just the way that we're taught in our society to put ourselves last. So, my program, one of the best ways I like to look at it is like, imagine you're starting a fire, like a campfire out in the wilderness, but it's super windy. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to light a fire in a windstorm. It sucks. It's really hard. So the first part of the program is calming down the storm, really like just settling things down so that you can light that fire. And the truth is, once you settle the storm down, you realize the fire was never out. There's always that ember there. And then we move into kind of figuring out, what do you want in life? Really, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Is it firing you up? So often we get depressed because we're repressed, and we're repressed because we're not expressing. So, and it doesn't mean you have to quit your job and write poetry, even though I do like writing poetry, but it's not about you have to do something completely different to express yourself. You need to go for more walks, rub your dog's belly. You need to enjoy the food that you're eating. You need to enjoy the sunsets or the beach or the lake or the mountains or the river, the whatever your thing is. And that's kind of the stage where we're picking off the wet logs, and we're really kind of putting on good logs to help that fire grow. And then finally, it's really just about learning about the law of attraction and how powerful our thoughts and our intentions are, how powerful our words are. You get to be really careful about what you're saying, what you're speaking. Are you speaking into existence things that you want or things that you don't want? And that's just adding fuel to the fire. So then you have this beautiful fire that's burning so big and so bright that it can light other fires. You could share that heat, that warmth, that light with other people, which is clearly what Otto's been doing as well, just from taking care of himself. Like, he didn't set out to, he didn't say, I need to be a coach or I need to start speaking about this. But I know from personal experience that everyone he touches now is better off for it. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're doing. We're cultivating that inner flame and helping it burn bright so that we could illuminate the world. And it's not hard. It's not through forcing. It's fun. It's joyful. It's where the fruit, the juice of life lies, is cultivating that fire within and then sharing it with the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned meditation. I did very much remember my first time trying to do meditation, which I thought was a very easy thing to do, by the way, but it's not. I was told to count as high as I possibly can do and not think of anything else but the numbers and breathe very deeply. And as soon as you thought of something else, you had to go back to one. I don't think I ever went past 2 for a first 6 or 7 weeks when I was first meditating. Also, do you remember those days when you were just trying to clear your mind for the first time? And it's not easy, is it? Even today, it does still take a while to drown out that noise that we've got going in our heads.
It's amazing looking back on how impossible it felt. Like, 5 minutes seemed like an insurmountable mountain. Like, there was just no way I was ever going to get there. And just so amazing. Once you do learn how to, and trust me, I still have mornings where I struggle. But once you do learn how to just sit there and let all of that go and just focus on the weight of your body in the chair, or on the couch or wherever I'm sitting, when I can just really focus there, it's not just the freedom that I feel when I come back into the real world, but it's the ability that it gives me, no matter what I'm doing during the day, when I recognize that my mind's taking me somewhere that I don't need to be. Like, I realize that, no, you're making that up. That you're imagining the worst case scenario. And if I'm going to imagine something, I want to imagine a fairy tale. I don't want to imagine a horror story. And so when I realize that I'm just creating the worst case scenario, I'm able to stop it. And I do feel like that is the biggest benefit of daily meditation, is my newfound ability to recognize when my mind's taking me somewhere that I don't want to be.
But Otto, I mean, tell us now, how's your health? How's your relationship with your family? Where is your working relationships lie?
So I weigh less than 200 pounds for the first time since I was in the fifth grade. Right now, I'm literally in the best shape of my life. At the age of 52, my wife and I are as closer than we've ever been in our lives. My son and I, we spent the weekend with our son. His girlfriend had to work this weekend, and so he stayed home with his mom and I and his little sister. We spent most of the weekend in the pool. Heard some revelations from him that I hadn't heard in years. We really struggled he's 23 years old. He was a U.S. Marine. I'll tell you how bad it was. He came home from the Marine Corps and went to work for me, lasted about 3 months and said I was a bigger asshole than any drill sergeant he ever had in the Marine Corps. So he found another job, but we're closer than we've ever been. It's funny. I used to measure success by the company's gross sales or the amount of zeros in my savings account. Now I have a barometer. I have something that I check to know if life's headed in the right direction. If I look down at my feet and I can't see the tan lines from my flip-flops, I know I'm not spending enough time on my boat. I need I need to relax a little bit more and go get out on that boat more. That it sounds like I'm making a joke, but that's really one of those things that I've put in place in my life. If I look down and I can't see a tan line where my flip-flops were, I know that I'm out of balance, if you will.
And how has that influenced as well the way you support your staff and your team and the culture that you have at your business?
It's really amazing. This past week I heard it in consecutive phone calls and then kind of did a little reflection. I've heard it a lot. Is people, a couple of people in my company, a couple of people without said, your people honestly love working for you. I promise you, Mike could tell you I'm not the kind of guy that would just sit here and try to compliment myself. As a matter of fact, I usually run in the opposite direction. But Mike helped give me that ability because I'm genuinely interested in my people, not just the people that work for me, but people in my life, in their well-being. I honestly, I want people to experience the joy that is this beautiful world we live in. Mike, one of the things that he really taught me is that heaven is earth. Earth is heaven. It can be our heaven. We can also make it our hell. And I genuinely want more people to recognize it as that. I want to do anything I can to help anyone I can to feel the joy that is this beautiful life that we've all been given. And it affects the output of everybody on my team. I honestly believe that. I think they know that I genuinely care about their well-being, and I think it makes them more productive human beings. I'm not talking about just for associated. That's a byproduct. If I can help them become the best version of themselves, everything else is going to work out.
You started as a busboy, you became a restaurant manager, and you wanted to work in hospitality. I never asked you why you wanted to work in hospitality.
I think all of us that do this are afflicted with the same disease. We want to make people happy, and for a long time, I thought that was what I could give them, whether it was a plate of food or a discount on a bill or a whatever, what this tangible thing I could give people. And the last few years, I've realized that joy doesn't come from any of that. Joy, don't get me wrong, a great meal is something worth celebrating, or a great experience at a hotel or on a cruise ship or all of those things. But the ability to really love yourself and to love yourself to such a degree that you can't help but pour it out to the people that you care about is the greatest gift you can give anyone.
Otto, thank you so much for sharing your entire story. I felt every bit of it, in fact, and I had probably as many tears come to my eyes as Mike did there. Now, Mike, you have launched the Self Hospitality Collective. Could you please tell us a bit about it, the purpose behind it, and how people can become members of this?
What I've seen over the past several years, and in huge thanks to Otto for really helping me work with this industry that I love so much, and so many of his colleagues and his friends. The thing is, this work is intense, and it's usually pretty one-on-one. I only work with maybe one or two clients at a time, and it's like he said, it's like, I just want more people to experience joy. I want more people to not leave the industry, not feel so fed up that they have to leave, but just find that joy that's always there. So I'm creating this. It's a free community for the hospitality industry, for anyone who considers themselves a leader, and that could be a busboy or a housekeeper or a bartender. But it's anyone who wants to really have a place where they can exhale, where they could feel seen and heard, have a community to share with and feel supported. And then also, I'm going to be sharing a lot of my practical tools and techniques, guided meditations, gratitude exercises, meditations, visualizations, everything that I think is going to help people really start to make a difference in their life. And it's going to be totally free. If anyone wants to join, it's theselfhospitalitycollective.com. Right now, there's actually a forum up, and I'm just getting feedback from people in the industry on how to make this the best it can be to really serve. And I just want to use Otto as the example of admitting when it's dark, admitting when you're in a dark place and feeling okay to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I know there's some light inside, but I need help finding that. That's what I want this community to be for. And I also think one of his best traits is that he never stops growing or learning. I mean, just this morning we caught up for a little bit, and he told me he had the best workout of his life. At 52 years old, he's working out with a trainer and getting in the best shape of his life, whether it's, his Vistage group for CEOs, or it's a trainer at the gym, or it's another business program, or a mindfulness group, or a retreat, or something. It's never stop growing, never stop learning. And that's what I want this community to be as well. A true resource of mindfulness, just a mindfulness library, a stress relief library, helping people actually learn the tools and techniques. And I do want to say meditation is not hard. It's not. It's just, you just got to do it. Even if it's a minute every day, you just have to do it and find something that works for you. It could be counting to 10 instead of as many numbers as you can, which I think is kind of not the best advice, because you're in that competition mode instead of just focusing on something. But again, it's just having the access to those resources. So that's what this collective is all about. And just to have some unity. I know what you're doing is beautiful, and we're in this age of AI, and we need to focus on technology and digitalizing travel and hospitality. But what we're doing in the Self Hospitality Collective is humanizing the hospitality industry and reminding everyone that we're all human, we're all people. We all got into this for the same reason, is that we love to make people happy and to give great service, but we don't treat ourselves like the sacred guest in our own life that we deserve to be, that in fact we need to be if we want to make anyone else feel that way. So I'm so excited about it. I'm going to be hosting monthly workshops, which will also be free. Just more and more sharing like this, just to help people feel a little less alone and realize that it's okay to not feel okay. It's actually good to feel depressed and anxious and even have panic attacks, because you're starting to wake up to the signs that the universe is giving you. And just to say, it's okay. Now what? Now do something about it. You get to choose your discomfort. Change is uncomfortable, but so is staying stuck when you know that your soul has moved on, but your body's kind of stuck where it's at. It's time to catch up.
Mike, Otto, thank you very much for joining us today on Travel Market Live, Hotelier's Voice. So pleased to say that was Mike Mesoroff and Otto Abad sharing their story with us, and really make sure that you take the moment to find someone that you can potentially speak to if you're having difficulties and challenges, particularly in your professional life. and not being able to drown out that noise. You can find out all the links within the descriptions of these podcasts, where you can get more information on the Self Hospitality Collective. Thank you ever so much for listening to this very different and more extended episode. I'm your host, Ryan Haynes. Thanks for listening.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.